I want to welcome everyone to our Black History Month event. Each year the Dillard University Center for Racial Justice has a keynote speaker for this month, and we're very honored to have Mr. Marc Morial, former mayor of New Orleans and the current president of the uh, and CEO of the National Urban League, with us tonight. I've had um, the pleasure of hearing Mark and several different platforms and speaking. I've always enjoyed his every function that he speaks at. He's very thorough, engaging, and you really learn something as you attend his events. And certainly we've had smaller segments with he's done some Zoom discussions with our students in the past. We've also appreciated that. He's always made himself available, even when he's traveling. He'll stop and make sure that he's makes the time for us. So we appreciate it tonight. As we get into the sixth year of the Dillard University Center for Racial Justice, and which was established in June 2020, following the murder of George Floyd, the Board of Trustees, felt that the university really wanted the university to get much more involved in activism and social change. And then from there, the university came to me about directing and starting the center, and we really took off from there. And we were fortunate. We have several different components of the center, and one of the big components is really to bring in, folks like Mr. Marc Morial to campus or on Zoom to maybe share his thoughts and wisdom about some of the current issues and past issues regarding race and racism and also surrounds, gender and class as well. So we're honored to have, again, Mr. Morial on with us tonight. And our moderator tonight, which also we're very honored to have, is Mr. Bankole Thompson, who is one of our board of directors for the Center for Racial Justice. And Mr. Thompson is an opinion columnist with the Detroit News and also founder and dean of the Pulse Institute. And we've had some of our students on his Sunday show, Sunday Nation, I think that's what you call it, in the past. That's been very good and excellent. So we really thank you for allowing our students to join on your show on Sunday mornings as well. So I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of start moderation.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ishmael, and of course to our viewers and listeners. Thank you all for being here. Again, I'm Bankole Thompson, coming to you from Detroit, the Motor City. It's an honor to be here this evening, and of course, it was always my pleasure and delight when Dr. Ashraf invited me 4 years ago to be on the executive board of the Center for Racial Justice. Of course, it happened after I was invited to give a lecture at Dillard in 2022, right after I spoke at Brown University. Our guest this evening, of course, is no stranger to this nation, has been at the forefront of the battle for racial and economic justice. Marc Morial is a household name in Black America. Aside from being a political leader out of New Orleans, once the largest slave market in the United States, a man who's deeply rooted in Black negritude. And of course, as James Brown would say, I'm Black and I'm proud. And I think that has always been the epitome of what Marc Morial has done, defending Black humanity, Black America, and the global Black diaspora. He served 2 terms successfully as mayor of New Orleans, emerged in his 20s, at the age of 26, argued an important case before the Louisiana Supreme Court. He has been a pacesetter and an Ivy League graduate, but Marc Morial has always been grounded to his people, in his culture and to this community. And whenever you see him on the networks, you know he is going to bring it and he's going to speak on behalf of Black folk. And I think there is nobody more qualified, more eminent, more distinguished to speak tonight to the vision of Carter G. Woodson, who inspired and founded Black history, than the one and only Marc Morial. Thank you so much for being here.
I am absolutely honored to be with both of you tonight and to be with the Dillard University students, the Dillard University Blue Devils. I want to thank all the students, and I want to encourage all the students. As students of Dillard University, you are attending a historically Black university that has incredible roots. And I want to start tonight by paying tribute to Albert W. Dent. Albert W. Dent was the president of Dillard University from the 40s to the early 70s and was one of the founders of the United Negro College Fund, and a considerable figure among Black colleges and universities. And he put Dillard University on the map nationally in the 1950s. and indeed the 1960s. So in this Black History Month, we want to salute a Black history maker who is part of the Dillard University community, and that's Albert W. Dent. I had the opportunity to remember Dr. Dent. He was a dear friend of my late grandfather. My late grandfather, Dr. C.C. Hydell, attended Straight University, one of the predecessor universities that consolidated in the 30s to become Dillard University. Straight and New Orleans University came together, and Dillard University was formed in the 1930s. And Dr. Dent and my late grandfather and a number of other prominent leaders in those days championed the cause for civil rights in the days of segregation, So young people, very quickly, Black History Month, this is 100 years since Dr. Carter G. Woodson, I want you to remember that name if you don't know it, envisioned Negro History Week. 1 week, the week of the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, to celebrate Black history, because as a scholar who attended Harvard, he noticed that there was scant mention of African American or African contributions in any of the history books that were being used to teach students in the United States. And here's the important thing. He did not just say, I don't like it. He said, let me do something about it. And Black History Month came out of Negro History Week, and now is something continuously celebrated. But I want to say this, every day is Black History Day. Every month is Black History Month, because we should celebrate the contributions of African Americans every single day of the week, every single day of the month, every month of the year. Now, when we say that, we don't say, don't celebrate the contributions of others. We say we will not be left out. And even in this moment, there's still so much incredible history of African Americans and of Black people that is still being uncovered and written and documented in documentaries and in history books and in biographies and autobiographies, and this quest to tell the incredible story of Black people is not complete by any stretch of the imagination. Now, we must resist any effort to ban the books of Black authors, to ban books, movies, documentaries, periodicals, or pamphlets that celebrate African American history, because there's a move in the nation to ban books, ban the books of Toni Morrison, ban the books of Nicole Hannah-Jones. We have to resist, because that's inconsistent with what is known as the First Amendment's right to free speech. And we cannot allow our speech and our right to tell our stories to be suppressed, exterminated, or marginalized. In this Black History Month, I want you to center this fact. We are now in 2026. We're 25 years in to the 21st century, 1/4 of the way through the 21st century. And we're also at the 250th year. Think about that, the 250th year since the founding in 1776 of the United States of America. So in a moment like this, we should take stock. One thing we should take stock of is the state of Black America, which to me is a state of emergency today. Why? Because there's an active effort to undermine the progress of the last 70 years. And what is that progress? Let me start with 1954. The Supreme Court declares segregated schools unconstitutional and overrules the Plessy versus Ferguson decision. 1955, Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat on the bus in Montgomery leading to a bus boycott and a lawsuit, which ended up desegregating the buses in Montgomery, Alabama, and inspired a movement of direct action that Martin Luther King was central to. 1963, the March on Washington takes place as civil rights leaders in that day wanted to pressure the Kennedy-Johnson administration to live up to their commitment and the promise they made in the election of 60 to pass a civil rights bill. We know that that tragic year, Medgar Evers was killed. The 4 little girls in Birmingham were bombed at the church. And then tragically, President Kennedy was assassinated. But a year later, in 1964, the Congress of the United States passed the most important law in the history of the United States, the Civil Rights Act of 64, which finally gave the full benefits of citizenship to African Americans and those who were formerly enslaved. A year later, the Voting Rights Act passed. A year later, the Great Society economic programs, including Medicaid and Job Corps and Head Start, were passed. 3 years later, the Fair Housing Law was passed. Why is this important? Because today, there's an effort emanating from the White House, if you can imagine that, to undermine, marginalize, and cut back. The EEOC, which was designed to ferret out discrimination against Black people, has now been weaponized to encourage companies to discriminate against Black people under the guise and under the subterfuge of an anti-DEI agenda. Our generation and your generation are now in a moment where we will need to renew, energize our fight to keep these doors open, to keep these doors open, to keep these doors open. Am I excited that we have to refight these battles? No way at all. I'm not excited. In fact, I'm the opposite of excited. I'm indignant and I'm not happy about it. Yet, to us falls this responsibility. And we've made a great deal of progress. Think of the fact that in this 70-year period, we've elected mayors of every major American city: Detroit, Chicago, New Orleans, Atlanta, Washington, Philadelphia, New York, Los Angeles, Houston, Dallas, Atlanta. I could go further. We've elected a few governors: Governor Moore, Governor Patrick, Governor Wilder. We have more African Americans serving in the Senate right now than have served in the Senate in the complete and total 250 years of the history of the United States. And of course, we've had an African American president, an African American vice president, and an African American attorney general, and many other very important roles. African American justices on the Supreme Court, and I salute Ketanji Brown Jackson for the work that she does. Yet, despite that, we still face an income gap. Despite that, we face a racial wealth gap. Despite that, we face an academic achievement gap. But I'm here to say to young people today, you will not be frustrated, because frustration is not an agenda. You will not be dejected, because dejection is not a strategy. You will maintain hope and confidence that we will get through these challenging times. Your job, number one, to do as well as you can at Dillard University. Don't cheat yourself. Give everything you can to do the best that you can, because after all, you're investing in and paying for your education. Get the most out of it. Number two, be a champion of equal justice and equal rights. Whatever walk, career you choose, be a champion of fair treatment for all. And thirdly, very importantly, spread the mission and be a person of activism, a person who's active in the community, involved in the community. Many of you are doing it now inside of student organizations at Dillard University. I'm encouraging you to do it and continue it. So this Black History Month, we are in a state of emergency, but we're still proud. We are in a state of emergency, but we have incredible accomplishments. We are in a state of emergency, but I believe we have a generation, your generation, that is prepared to carry this fight. So with that, I'm going to pause and take questions, but I am thankful for the chance to be with you tonight.
Thank you so much, Marc. Well put, well said. Of course, this sets the stage. We'll be taking questions from our audience members, but meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and fire the first question. On the note of writers, Marc, I take a personal privilege to that because my late godfather, George Haley, the brother of Alex Haley, always told me that writers have the ability to shape history. You talk about banning books and so forth, all the other ugliness that we're seeing in this moment, in this era, in this dispensation. And when I think about the first book written about the biography of Martin Luther King, What Manner of Man, by the late Leron Bennett, talk about the significance, though, that Black writers, journalists, authors have in this moment as recorders of history. In view of the fact that the National Urban League perhaps has distinguished itself as perhaps the only organization every year that releases the State of Black America report, which is something that we all look forward to. Talk about the importance of Black writers, authors, journalists, and documentarians in this moment that we're dealing with.
I appreciate the question. So the importance of Black writers is that Black writers will write the history with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And we know that our history was written in a slanted, marginalized way. For example, the history of Tulsa, the Tulsa massacre for years was that Black people rioted and caused their own demise by rioting against police authorities. We know because of research done and new writings done by Black authors and others, by Black journalists and others, that was a false story. And the true story was that these communities, this community and the Black Wall Street was massacred by an angry racist mob. One example of why we need Black writers, and we need writers who are going to write in an authentic fashion. Black newspapers, now Black bloggers, Black podcasters, Black writers of books, writers of poetry, writers of film. The written word takes many, many, many forms. And I think it is crucially important. And I'm going to encourage you all to do some reading. Pick up a book and read it. Get an audio book if you don't want to read, you can listen to it. There's so many ways to consume this information. I have a book called The Gumbo Coalition that talks a bit about my leadership and talks about leadership lessons. You mentioned the late, great Leron Bennett, who wrote many, many books while serving as editor of Ebony and Jet magazine. African-American writers have been incredible storytellers. I think of John Hope Franklin and his seminal book, Slavery to Freedom. That should be on your library. That should be on your library because it chronicles the incredible history of Africans in America up until, the present. So we have a role. Those of you who are writers, I encourage you, and we all write in one way, shape, or form today. One of the things that the internet has done is it has made us all content creators, right? And gives you an opportunity to tell in real time. I encourage people to use that platform, not just to chop it up with friends, not just to trade photos of yourself, but also to give your thoughts and statements on contemporary issues of public policy, of politics, of community affairs. Everyone today can be a scribe, can be a griot, can be a chronicler, and use that platform.
Mark, on the preservation of Black-oriented organizations, Black institutions like the National Urban League, the NAACP, the Rainbow Push Coalition, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, you name it. Talk about the relevance and the significance of that in this era. Back then, it was our institutions that helped to drive change and get us to where we are today. How important is it for Black institutions to stand firm and to push the envelope the way you're doing?
Let me give you context. In 2008, when Barack Obama was elected, there were mainstream journalists who said, now that a Black president is in the White House, there's no need for the National Urban League, the NAACP, the National Action Network. There's no need. Haven't you achieved your objective? We said our objective has never been to elect any one man or one woman to any one position. Our aim is fairness, justice, and economic parity. That's our goal. When and if that occurs, and it is guaranteed, then there will not be a need for us. But until that moment comes, there's a need for us. Here's what's important. What our organizations give us is a way to work collectively. And the civil rights organizations you mentioned, the Divine Nine, our historically Black churches, our historically Black colleges and universities, and the many, 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 many local community-based organizations that exist are the way in which we collectivate and amalgamate our influence and our power. And it is the American way of doing things. Voluntary organizations. Alexis de Tocqueville visited the United States in 1935 and said, wow, America's different because you have all these voluntary organizations. What's so prescient is that after Plessy, one response by our community was to create with our allies in NAACP, create with our allies a National Urban League, create the Divine Nine, create the National Association, or rather the National Bar, the National Medical, the National Black Social Workers, the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Together, it was a demonstration of collective power. And that is what our organizational, why our organizations are important. On a campus, you have many community or rather student-based organizations. They give you a chance to work with others. We can never surrender the integrity or the importance of our institutions. National Urban League today serves 6 million people a year. We have 2,500 employees nationally, 36 states, 94 affiliates, a policy office in Washington, D.C., a credit union, a small business lending platform. We have impact, and we know because we study it every year, we have $1 billion economic impact on the community and on America. And that's just us, not to mention all of the others. So we've got to recognize and remember that our collectivity is where our power comes from. Individuals can do great things, but individuals teaming with other individuals can do much greater things.
And when you look at where we are right now, what are you most worried about?
I am worried about our ability to muster our energy and our effort and our determination and drive to battle what we're facing. I think that we cannot rest. We cannot, if you will, be complacent. We have to be focused. We have to be energized, and we have to realize This is the fight of our lives.
In many instances, we have seen, some folks try to dismiss the relevance of the civil rights movement today. And for some reason, I've noticed that there's been perhaps a rejuvenation about its relevance in the wake of the unfortunate passing of the Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, founder and president of the Rainbow Push
And you
Coalition.
all hold on. I have to go pay the guy who's moving the snow.
All right.
Y'all continue with the conversation.
So I was saying to Mr. Morial, in the wake of the passing of the Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, there's been perhaps a renewed interest, if you will, Ishmael, on the relevance of the civil rights movement, given his own contributions towards the civil rights movement, and the fact that he became the first African American to make a credible run for president of the United States. Even former President Barack Obama issued a statement saying that it was the Reverend Jesse Jackson who actually laid the foundation for his own historic candidacy and so forth. And of course, my question to Marc was going to be, what does he think about this pivot, if you will, now? There seems to be this widening embrace of the principle of civil rights leadership and the importance of the civil rights movement. Have you seen the same, Ishmael?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've obviously seen the election of Barack Obama. We've seen advocation. It's not only in terms of race, but also gender as well, right? As we've seen women, and so in both entities, we've seen growth. And we hope that it continues, right, in terms of leadership positions. And we still haven't broken the barrier yet with gender. We've broken it with race, but hopefully it's not a one time either, right? So hopefully we'll see more candidates, run for office and to, diminish the idea that race or even gender or even issues that people even vote around. They were voting around the person rather than the race or gender of a person. So, but again, as we think about the civil rights in the 60s, we've moved. We still have a lot to move forward. I mean, a lot to change still needs to happen. We're not quite at the level we need to be quite yet, but hopefully we'll keep continuing again to move forward.
Right. I'm back. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was saying that Reverend Jesse Jackson's unfortunate passing kind of has reignited this interest in the significance of the civil rights movement, the relevance of civil rights leadership exemplified by individuals like yourself and others. And it's almost as if, the question I have is like, where have you all been? Because when people talk about Reverend Jackson, oh, wow, he did all of this. This is why the civil rights movement is so important. We need more civil rights leaders in terms of just the groundbreaking things that he was able to do. I want you to speak to that because whatever Reverend Jackson has been able to achieve certainly goes to underscore why the civil rights movement is even needed today.
We are going to have to step up because Reverend Jackson and his passing leaves a huge void. Reverend Jackson is the most important and significant single civil rights leader of the last 50 years. He carried on, and he and Andrew Young and a number of others were the legatees of Martin Luther King, the people who worked with Dr. King and then carried on his work in their own ways, in different ways. Jesse maintained a civil rights posture, but I would add that his race for president in 1984 and in 88 was groundbreaking, history-making, and in many ways earth-shattering. He paved the way for Bill Clinton's election in 92. He paved the way for Barack Obama's election in 2008. And it is so important for people to recognize the role he played and the role he played on the economic justice front, pressuring corporations and others to hire African Americans and do more for African Americans. He, is going to be missed. And I can tell you, the Dillard University community, I can remember a number of times when Reverend Jackson visited the campus of Dillard University for voter registration drives and the like. I remember specifically on a single day, he visited Xavier, and Dillard and Southern University in New Orleans back in the 1980s to register people to vote. And in those days, you had to go to the courthouse to register. There was no registration by mail. There was no satellite registration. Reverend Jackson's strategy would be to hold a rally, and then we would board 10 to 15 buses and go downtown to the courthouse or go down to the registrar's office in New Orleans, and young people would stand in line and register to vote. Reverend Jackson is going to be incredibly and sorely missed, and he leaves a very big void. And so many of us now have to indeed fill that void, and I think many of us have worked hard to do it. You know, he represented the activist and the activist ministerial lane of the civil rights movement, which has been occupied by Dr. King and Hosea Williams, and occupied by and I think there are a number of very exciting ministerial leaders: Jamal Bryant, Otis Moss III, just to name a few, Freddie Haynes, who have brought, I think, the same fire and interpretive abilities that Reverend Jackson brought. And then there are those of us who are not ordained, who play important roles, but sometimes differential roles than they play. And I think we have a leadership today which is not centered around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. It's far more broad, far more varied. It's a mosaic, and then there are many local leaders who have great impact. But we are going to all be challenged to step up with the death of Reverend Jackson.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that into the conversation, Mark, because even as you speak about the fact that he laid the groundwork for former President Barack Obama and others, you know, and I've been hearing this conversation lately, and I had the rare opportunity to spend a lot of time with Reverend Jackson here in Detroit and so forth. But also he promised when he was running that he was going to put Geraldine Ferraro on the ticket. So he basically became the first individual credible candidate to open the idea that a woman could be on the ticket. And we've gone on to see Hillary Clinton become the Democratic nominee. We've gone to see Vice President Kamala Harris become vice president. So the racial question he addressed, and of course the gender issue, also he broke ground on there.
Look, one of the things that's so crucial about Reverend Jackson was this concept of the Rainbow Coalition. And in many ways, he was way ahead of his time in talking about a multi-dimensional America, a multiracial, a multi-religious. He's one of the first candidates to include the LGBTQ community, one of the first candidates to have women in leadership roles. Think Donna Brazile and a number of others, Yolanda Caraway and Mignon Moore, others who were in leadership positions in his 1984 and 1988 campaigns. It is crucial to understand the role he played. He was ahead of his time, and that is the most important thing. And sometimes when you're ahead of your time, you don't get your just due. There were many people who sought to diminish Reverend Jackson's role in Barack Obama's election. And it wasn't a direct, it was paving the way, because Jesse ran and broke the ice. President Obama did not have to be burdened with the suggestion that he was running a symbolic campaign. I was there in 84, in 88, 92, 96, 2000, 04, 08. You know, I was there. I was a delegate to every one of those conventions and remember quite clearly and unambiguously what went down and how it happened.
All right, and then we'll take some questions now. If you have any questions, feel free to fire your questions by typing the question and I'll read them on the message board. Ishmael will help me with that. But let me go to the State of the Black America report, because that's a unique document and I read it and I write stories, columns on it when you release it every year. Let's talk about the significance of that, though. Why the Urban League feels the need to issue a report each year, because there's no other organization, no other Black institution in the country does what you do, and it's a very comprehensive report.
It is crucial that we do it, and its history is that it was a brainchild of Vernon Jordan. And it was a brainchild of Vernon Jordan in 1976 because he heard President Ford give his State of the Union address. And President Ford didn't mention Black America, didn't mention civil rights, didn't mention the economic recession, which was battering urban communities at the time. We're going to hear tomorrow when President Trump gives his State of the Union address. We are likely to not hear any mention, maybe disparagements of our community. So Vernon said, we'll do our own report. And the report was born. I have taken the report to another level. I've added statistical components to it. I've expanded the number of people who write for it. And we have sought to define the disparities in America with numbers and statistics, which we do the statistical index every 2 to 3 years. And so it is important that we talk. And here's what's so, I think, interesting. The State of Black America is also a commentary on the State of the Union, because the conditions that Black people face can't be separated from the overall conditions in the country. Think now the economic conditions brought on by the tariff tax and the economic chaos and the slowdown in growth. It spiked Black unemployment. It has caused many, many layoffs. Black people to a great extent, but others are being laid off too. So our commentary is on the state of Black America and on disparities, but we really end up commenting on the broader impact on the country.
On a deeper reflection, what do you think Martin Luther King Jr., Whitney Young, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, and others will say about this era that we're in now?
I think they'd be shocked. I think they would be shocked to see. Let's remember 6 years ago in May, we had the death of George Floyd, the murder, and we had this incredible awakening and all these commitments made. Now all we see is backtracking and retrenching. I mean, it's a stunning, if you will, reversal and a stunning betrayal. And I think that a King and a Whitney and a Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker, they would have been celebrating in 2008. They would have been introspective in 2020. But right now, they would exhort us to fight and defend and protect.
And the word I keep hearing, Mark, is that a lot of people are fearful. They're scared because it's almost as if we are retrending back to the Red Scare movement in the 70s, you know, the blackmail, if you will, and so forth. When you speak out, you'll be targeted and so. What do you have to say to people who feel
I
like they have to cower in fear?
Look, I understand the way people feel. But leaders have to have courage. You got to dig into it and have courage. You know, I grew up in New Orleans in the waning days of segregation. My father was a civil rights leader. Death threats, being called to our home phone, Ku Klux Klan threats were common when I was a boy. My parents, I never saw them flinch. I never felt that they were afraid of anything. They just shouldered on. We got to understand that part of the game is to intimidate us into silence. And we cannot be intimidated. We have to step up and we have to stand up. We have to do it constructively, but we've got to do it consistently. And so I'm not going to dismiss the fact that people may feel, but I'm saying, you think that Fannie Lou Hamer? Mm-hmm. Do we ever think that Harriet Tubman? Do we ever think that the people in the 1960s or the people even in the dark days of segregation when lynching, they lived in great fear? They lived in great fear too. But they had courage to fight back, courage to be, and so we've got to, our leaders have to have courage. If you can't exhibit courage in this moment, you should turn in your leadership badge.
Turn in your black card.
Turn it in.
My next question is the student movement, student activism. You know, the nonviolent student coordinating committees, SNCC, and others, and so forth. Back then, when we read the history books, you know, we find out, we discover that John Lewis was probably 19, 20 when he wrote a letter to Dr. King. Dr. Bernard Lafayette Jr., others, and several others, leaders of the civil rights movement, were actually in their teens when they started getting to the movement. So it's not like they waited to have a PhD out of Harvard or get a master's out of Dillard to do this. What is your message to young people, to the students who are listening on this virtual conversation here? What can they do? What is their contribution to the modern civil rights movement?
So first, there's some fundamentals and some basics. One is to make a commitment to be registered and to vote. That's simple, that's basic, that's fundamental. Every college student, every student at Dillard should be registered. And every student at Dillard should vote in the fall elections and vote in every single election. Make a lifelong commitment to vote in every election. That's a commitment I made when I was 18. I think I've missed one election in my life, and it's because of travel schedule, where I forgot to absentee vote and I was out of town on the day of an election. But I make it an absolute commitment to vote in every single election. Number two, find your spirit and cause of activism. It may be environmental justice, it may be voting rights, it may be immigration rights, it may be economic rights. But my exhortation is to be active as a student and as a citizen. Find your own way. Find your own way. The young people at North Carolina, A&T and Greensboro, the young people who boarded buses for the Freedom Rides, the young people who sat in, and there were sit-ins in downtown New Orleans led by students like Rudy Lombard, sat in at the Woolworth's counter, exhibited great courage. And when they were doing it, many times their parents and teachers didn't necessarily sanction it or favor it. Yet they had the courage to do peaceful resistance. This generation has to find its stride, but I think registering and voting is fundamental and basic.
Ishmael, do you have a question?
We have several questions here in the Q&A, so we'll
great.
Okay, so first question. As the son of the first Black mayor of New Orleans and a civil rights pioneer, and as a former mayor yourself, how did your father's example influence your approach to leadership? How do you define legacy when it comes to setting a standard for future generations within the Black community?
You know, it was interesting. My father never told me, encouraged me, made me go to campaign rallies or civil rights rallies when I was a kid. And my brother and I just kind of got hooked on it. You know, when we were, 8, 9, 10 years old, NAACP meetings, civil rights rally, political rally, we wanted to go. And I think that was infectious. And I think when I watched my father, when he ran the first time, he was an underdog candidate. Many people, including many in the Black political establishment, didn't think he had a shot, and he beat the odds. But what I remember is he ran with ideas. He had a platform. He was talking about things he was going to do on policing and housing and economic development, and how he was going to bring Black people into the mainstream of the community. he wasn't running for show. He was running for cause and purpose. And I think that really, I think was instilled in me, that politics and running for office is about cause and purpose and service, not about, let me just get a position of power so I can be important. Let me just get a position of power so I can be prominent. Let me just get a position of power because I want power. And it had a profound impact on me. But as I said, he never said you should get into politics. He said the opposite. He said, you know, you and your brother, maybe you guys should go be businessmen and get some work on the racial wealth gap to some extent. He said, you know, I've done enough, paid enough dues out here, your mother and I, you should go do something else. Well, we just ignored him, right? Because it was nice for him to say it. I don't know if he was saying it because he meant it, but we just, and for me, my political career didn't begin as an elected political until after my father passed. And I like to say to people that I inherited all of my father's enemies and half of his friends. So I had to go.
Wait. What did you say again?
I inherited all of his enemies and half of his friends. You know, and I'm like, wow, I got to go make my own way. You know, in politics, and that was true. You know, I had lots of friends and lots of support, and a lot of young, you know, contemporaries and young people. But it was an uphill climb because I was running for office as a very young person, and when I ran and Troy Carter ran along with me in 1991 and in 1994, we both ran for the legislature, and then he ran for the council when I ran for mayor. We had Oliver Thomas as well, and Ellen Hazor, and a number of others. We had this cadre of young people who were all in our 30s rather, who ran for office and won because we wanted to change the direction of the city.
Next question we have from one of our participants. In our generation in the 21st century today, what do you think is one of the strongest movements that has come out and pushed the Black society and community forward?
I mean, you've got to give a great deal of credence to the Black Lives Matter consciousness movement in 2020. Maybe it didn't have the legs that many people thought it may have had, but it had a profound impact, and it gave young people a voice. It was a worldwide movement, and so many young people took up the cause, Black and white and Hispanic and Asian, urban and suburban. So I think that was a powerful moment. But I also think we've got to give, I think the election of Barack Obama was a movement campaign, where once again, a lot of young people, a lot of people voted for the first time or were energized about politics the first time. And I think in the 21st century, but I also think the movement that became the Black Lives Matter movement really started with the death of Trayvon Martin back in 2013. And we had that incredible period of police misconduct and police violence with Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin and Sandra Bland, and I could name a number of others in that period. And what was striking is almost none of them were held accountable in the courts. And because of the activism around George Floyd and the work of Attorney General Keith Ellison, who actually has Louisiana roots, the Attorney General of Minnesota, who became special counsel, the killer of George Floyd was convicted and is in jail today.
Next question from our audience. What structural barriers facing African Americans today are most often misunderstood by policymakers, and how should that be reframed?
I think most misunderstood is the racial wealth gap. How sometimes barriers prevent African Americans from becoming homeowners, from amassing wealth, barriers in the labor market from getting jobs that pay higher wages. I think on the economic front is where the barriers, we could break these barriers. We've made progress when it came to voting and electing people to office. We've not made a tremendous amount of progress, even though you have many successful African Americans, many middle-class African Americans. But you have many more middle-class African Americans today than you had in 1965. But you have many more white middle class. African Americans are like a caboose on a train. You know, our comparative status from an economic point of view has not changed a whole lot since 1965.
What leadership traits do you believe are most critical for the next generation of Black leaders?
You must love people. You must care about people. It must be real. It must be authentic. You must have work ethic. This is not a game. This is not a show. This is work. You must have work ethic if you're going to lead. Number three, you must have a sense of vision and a sense of direction in terms of where you want to see the community go. I think those are very important qualities. And I think you've got to be a good leader, you've got to be a good relationship builder, right? Amongst allies and friends. And you also have to learn to sometimes battle with people and their adversaries, but not enemies. Today's adversary could be tomorrow's ally.
This question, how can we better cultivate political literacy among young African Americans beyond voter turnout?
I think that Dillard should invite elected officials, council members and legislators and others to come to campus and say, what do you do? I mean, I think that, you know, there are many, many elected officials in New Orleans. They should be invited to campus. They should come and talk. Let people see these state senators, these state legislators, these council members, these judges who are elected. What do you do? Talk to us about what you do. Role modeling is important. Sometimes a role model shouldn't be in the distance, on television, on a poster, on an IG page. Bring them to campus. Look, I remember when I was, growing up as a young lawyer and activist, I cannot tell you how many times I was on Dillard, Xavier, and Suno's campuses. I could walk around Dillard, Xavier, and Suno's campuses blindfolded. And also in those days, UNO2, University of New Orleans, and Tulane from time to time, and Loyola from time to time. As a young elected official, we spent a lot of time on college campuses. I remember the mobilization against David Duke in 1991. And for me, campaigning on college campuses was a standard thing I did every time I ran. Now you don't see candidates do that. They take and ignore, and then after they're elected, invite them, bring them back.
Next question is from one of our students. There are many movements and campaigns going on at the moment for racial advancement. But how do you suggest we get our feet wet? Where do we start? What are some useful tips for us to kind of consider starting on our own?
Pick one. There's lots of activation at the local level in New Orleans. Since I don't live in New Orleans full time anymore, I can't specifically point to anyone. But I think the idea is, I remember when I was a student, we got involved in the anti-apartheid movement. You know, that became the movement. We got involved in the students movement against apartheid. When I was a law student, we had law students against apartheid. I mean, you know, it to some extent, seek and find. You know, today, young people have this tool. You can look up, you can research, you can find things. In my day, we'd see a poster on the wall, meeting organized against apartheid. Where is it? It's at XYZ church. We'll be there. We just went. We didn't know. Or some activation taking place on a college campus, SUNO or Dillard or Xavier. We just went. We didn't know. You now have the tool to look up. But also, I think campus organizing, right, is also important for campus-based activations of voter registration, civil rights, economic justice. There's so many ways. What's the most important thing? Focus on your work and on your studies and on going to class. And then think about being an active, impactful student.
Another one of our participants asked, moving forward, how do we continue to engage urban youth to get involved more with voting and becoming a part of this movement, even though they are uninterested and discouraged?
We got to fight. Discouragement is not a strategy. Discouragement is not a tactic. Discouragement is like saying, I surrender. I quit. You win, I lose. I like to use sports analogy. It's like you're showing up and you look across the court. You say, they got two guys, 6'10". Tell you what, let's go home. We're not even going to get on the court. You don't know if those 6'10" guys are slow. You don't know if they have any stamina. You don't know if they can jump. You cannot, we cannot fall prey to dejection. The adversary isn't tired. The adversary is not dejected. He's up all night scheming and plotting. We have to fight defeatism. And I get really worked up. I don't think it matters. I said, you're surrendering. You're saying, I lose. I'm comfortable with losing. We cannot. We got to work on people. We got to encourage people. It is hard. It is tough. It isn't a fair world. And racism is on the rise. But we got to fight back.
People often talk about they could not live during slavery because they would have done this or that. We're all living in a time of a different form of slavery. We're in a moment now. The inability to get along with each other is the primary issue we face. What would you say to a person who's embracing such thinking today?
I say to people, you should never, ever say, well, I would have or would not have done something during slavery. That's disrespectful. You didn't live during slavery. It's like people I know who say, I think we were better off under segregation. I said, did you live under segregation? Mm-hmm. You have no standing. It's like someone saying, well, let me tell you about the dinosaurs. What do you know about it? You never saw a dinosaur. We got to be respectful of those that came before us and not transpose ourselves into that time and say, I would or would not have done X, Y, or Z. We have to confront, learn, understand the struggles and the successes and the determination. But we have to live and lead today, right now in 2025, and not become, and we've got to recognize that I think of it this way. Are these times tough? Yes. But they're not as tough as what Harriet Tubman dealt with. Not as tough as my ancestors on the Whitney plantation up in Wallace, Louisiana, who were out in the hot sun picking sugarcane and getting beat. Let's be really, really careful and understand that for as tough as it is, those that came before us had it tougher.
Mark, I want you to talk about just briefly, even as we begin to round up this conversation, DEI, because I think it's significant. I have seen companies and corporations demonstrate the audacity of rolling back DEI, but they still want the support of the Black consumer market. They still want our dollars.
I am thoroughly disgusted with those American companies that are walking away from their commitment to equal opportunity. That's what it is. Equal opportunity. Diversity, equity, and inclusion described a set of strategies to achieve equal opportunity. And many of these companies are doing it because they've been intimidated and coerced by the administration and the regulatory bodies and the regulatory agencies. I applaud those that have stood up. Many have stood up. They've rejected shareholder resolutions. They've held firm on their commitments. And what they're doing in walking away is they're sanctioning the targeting and the singling out and the discrimination against us. Now, here's what I want everyone to remember. Polling data from the fall showed that by a 2-to-1 margin, the American people support diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you can look up online. It's on the National Urban League's social media website. Every demographic, there's strong support for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Many of these companies are walking away from where their customers and their investors and the general public is. And you see a couple of them have took it on the chin. We got to fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion because we have to fight for equal opportunity. That's what it is. A fair chance for all. And I say, don't give me this bogus argument about merit. What DE&I is about is giving everybody with merit a chance. That's what it's about. Well, the old way was, if you had merit and you were Black, don't apply. If you had merit and you were a woman, you're not going to get promoted. If you're merit and you have merit and you were Latino, you'll be steered into a menial job. That's what this has been about over the last several years. And it is the anti-DE&I effort in the country has hurt us. It's caused the Black unemployment to spike, almost double in the last 3 years. It's caused massive layoffs of African-American women. We got to stand up. And I stand up and I say to anybody, I support diversity, equity, inclusion. And you want to debate me, I'll debate you in a box, with a fox, on a train, in the rain. You name the place. I'll debate you on this nation's commitment to equal opportunity. They try to suggest that it's they have no evidence. They can't cite any cases. This is all just right-wing backlash politics. That's all it is.
The white backlash.
Yes.
We have a lot
okay.
We have a lot of questions in this Q&A.
Yeah, I'm about at time.
Do we have time for 3 more?
I could probably take one more. I got to get on.
Okay, let me go with one last more.
What time is it? Is it 8 yet? Yeah, I got
it. It is. Let's go with one last question.
Thank you. And I'll come back, look forward to coming back to campus maybe in the fall when I'm in town.
Sounds good. We'll arrange that. One last question. How do we as students and professors fight the battles educationally and politically dealing with the 850 books being removed from schools and libraries, and also reverse discrimination hiring practices that are specifically aimed at DEI that specifically target African American, African, Caribbean, and Latin American peoples at all socioeconomic levels?
Speak up against book bans. And if the books are taken out of the library, go buy them yourself. Go get them online. They might be able to take them out of the library, but they can't take it out. They can't take it out of your hands. We did an activation, I think last year, where we bought a bunch of bad books and gave them away to, I think, high school students. We have to remember they can ban the book from the library, but they're going to keep us from reading. And I think what we should do is read it and post about it. Read it and post, read it and talk, read it and have talkbacks. This is a clumsy effort tied to some kind of strategy to bring on American tyranny. You cannot enslave our minds. We will not allow you to do it. And we must resist. I think, speaking out is important. Voting is important. Look, one thing people need to understand, all of this is the fruit of the election. The election gave the Stephen Millers and the Russell Boyts and all of the anti-Black efforts in the country control of the government. Voting matters and voting counts. So one thing people need to understand, you want this to change, you better not stay home.
And we will conclude there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I know there's about 20 other questions in this chat.
I appreciate all the
luckily,
young
I'm recording this.
Come to campus.
I'll save the questions, and we'll have Mr. Morial on campus in the fall, and we'll continue this discussion. But thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Very much. I appreciate you enormously.
And we'll look to have you a formal invitation to Dillard sometime in the fall, and we'll continue this discussion. Thank you.
Go Blue Devils.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.